He's the new JYD for all intents and purposes, the new top baby face, and right out of the gate, you get to come after Jim, which is fantastic. Now that JYD is gone, and Jim is in this position, you had worked with him before. Obviously, he was part of the Rat Pack, and you're kind of helping him come along as
Oh,
a young
yeah.
wrestler during that period. What do you think about Jim in this new position as kind of the top
Oh,
guy in the company?
yeah. I was happy for him, and again, and you just said it, when he first started, I was there, and he tagged and was in tag matches with me, and then we'd worked some matches, I think,
Hmm.
uh, together. And I liked Jim from the get go. It was like, and again, it's kind of like, there's guys that profess to be tough, and then there's guys that are really tough. And I tell you what, if you took Jim Duggan and again, and Steve Williams. Steve Williams was another guy who was, a really nice guy, but you know, if you could only have two guys with you and you were going to take on a whole bar full of badasses, those would be the two guys you'd want on your side.
When you throw Akbar in there, you could really do some damage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Jim, a legit collegiate wrestler, nothing to piss around with. Obviously, we all know that Doc was
Yeah.
a badass in his own right. But yeah, it's cool to see Jim in that role. The thing that really sticks out for me when it comes to Jim is that guys like you and Jake and so many others that were top guys in the industry were also second generation wrestlers. And on the other side of that, you've got Jim Duggan, who didn't know about wrestling or care about wrestling until he was maybe 21, 22, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And he's getting it. So he's coming into the game late. But now, it's whatever. It's something like 5 years after he first started in wrestling. He's one of
Yeah.
the top guys in the Mid-South territory. Like, boy, it really speaks to Jim and how he understands the wrestling business, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And again, and a lot of it has to do with who you're exposed to. I
Mhm.
mean, like I said, Marcus, I grew up in wrestling. I mean, like from my youngest memories, uh, my dad was Mike DiBiase. I mean, not only a very well known and respected professional wrestler, but you talk about a badass. He's a national amateur champion too for Nebraska. I
Yeah.
don't know if that was for Nebraska, or I think he won it the 1946 AAU heavyweight wrestling champion. I think he was in the Navy, and I think when he got out of the Navy is when he went to Nebraska. But anyway, uh, you know, um, here's another legitimate badass, and I kind of looked at Jim like, here's a guy who's a real deal too. So
And Jim, by the way, credits you for helping him develop. Anytime you ask somebody like Jim, or anytime you ask Jim about his history in wrestling and like some of like the critical moments, learning moments,
yeah,
your name always comes up. So
yeah,
he always puts you over as the guy who really helped smarten him up to the business.
yeah, and and a good guy, and again, if it's kind of like there are guys who are coachable, and there's guys who aren't coachable, and there's a few of those we could talk about. We may have already talked about a few of them, but
So we've certainly mentioned a few of those names. Some guys.
but no, but Jim, hey, nobody better, man. He's a great guy.
Top notch, and in my opinion, one of the greatest baby faces I think in wrestling history. You take a look back at his body of work, the way that he would get the crowd pumped up and excited about his match, or getting them against the heel. Like, man, Jim was borderline unparalleled for many
Yeah,
years.
yeah, he was a good guy, great guy.